Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Well, rabbit, y'all. Do you say that, Patrice? Jenny, are you familiar with that expression?
I am not, but I'm learning about it from you, I think.
The beginning of the month, the first day of the month, you say rabbit, and it brings you good luck all month long. So I say that here. Learn that from an old DC radio hand.
Okay.
Anyway, it is 7:07 a.m. on News Talk 105.9 WMA. We are making sense of the news. I am Andrew Langer in for Larry O'Connor today. That lovely voice you heard, going up and anyway, contrasting with mine. I'm still waking up, Patrice. Is Patrice Onwuka. Hello,
Happy
Patrice.
Friday,
Happy
Andrew.
Friday. Listen, we got a great show continuing here. We've got former FCC Commissioner Michael Reilly talking to us about DEI implementation at the FCC. We've got dueling conversations about the dueling Trump-Biden visits to the border with Jenny Tare and Brett Baer in the next hour. And we've got Mike Litterst from the National Park Service going to join us, talk all about the cherry blossom time. That collective scream you hear is from people who must traverse the 14th Street Bridge in the springtime who don't want to have to deal with the cherry blossom traffic. But joining us right now, and I had a conversation yesterday on the radio with some folks about the D.C. Republican Party, is Pat Mara. He is, Pat is the chairman of the first day of, chairman of the D.C. Republicans. We've got the primary going on, Pat. People can already start to vote, huh?
That's right. Thanks for having me on, Andrew and Patrice. That's right. For the next 3 days, beginning at 8 a.m. each day and lasting till 7 p.m., Republicans who are registered in the District of Columbia can come and they can vote for their pick for presidential candidate. And this is important because, D.C. has 19 delegates, and this is our choice at the Republican National Convention as to who is allocated those delegates. It could be, there could be an allocation, it could be winner take all, but it's really D.C. Republicans' chance to weigh in the presidential contest. We are quite early. We were forced to move up our primary because we were situated on June 4th, which if we had held on June 4th under RNC rules, we would have lost 10 of our 19 delegates, so we had to move the primary. And we figured, what the heck, let's move up as early as possible. And so today, Friday, March 1st, is the first day you could possibly go without being penalized delegates. So
I just want to be really clear here. It's not just 19 delegates. You also have 16 alternates that can go. So basically, if you're a Republican in Washington, D.C., you have a pretty good chance if you want to go to Madison, Wisconsin, Milwaukee. You could go to Milwaukee this summer.
We do have we'll have opportunities for everyone to go to Milwaukee if they'd like to. We do have, I suppose, we have 32 positions available. They can apply to be a delegate or alternate delegate off the DC GOP website. They have to do that by March 8th, and then we'll review the applications, and 32 people will go. The three of us are automatic, the chairman, the committee man, and the committee woman. So that's how we get to 35.
So, Pat, we know who's right now on the ballot, and I'm not going to ask you what the polls are looking like, but, do you have a sense of, based on the types of Republicans that live in D.C., whether you feel like they tend to be more traditional establishment, and maybe they would be looking for a candidate that's different than the former president, or do you think they're much more aligned with the former president?
Sure. Well, we were certainly, we had a similar situation in 2016 where we also had to hold a primary in a single building. And in this case, I would say it's all about who gets their voters out to vote. It's really tough. If you're a DC Republican, you may look at the news and say, well, why, I don't need to go do that. That's already, that could be decided. And so it really is a matter of the candidates getting their folks out to vote. And we have the most active, frankly, the only active campaigns, obviously, are President Trump, Governor Haley, and believe it or not, David Stuckenberg.
Wait, who is that? This is a name of which I am unfamiliar. I consider myself fairly well versed on this, but I am unfamiliar with this name. Pat, please to explain who this person is.
So he's a businessman from who has a business in Florida, and he's been on the ballots in a number of different states. And interestingly, he and I know the Reilly campaign, and I'm pretty sure the Trump campaign, they've all been knocking on doors over the last at least several days, if not a week. They've been texting. They've really been getting the word out. The party, we had done our own marketing previously, but it's just important that Republicans show up to vote at the Madison Hotel at 1177 15th Street Northwest downtown.
So they have to go to the Marriott Madison Hotel. And I'm sorry, I know I'm making jokes about this, Pat, but you guys do you guys do yeoman's work. You really do. It's a tough town to be a Republican, and I don't mean this sort of generally, right? It's DC, DC, but it's a tough town to be if you're a resident of DC to be a Republican activist in, because the cards are stacked against you here. But this is a really good opportunity for folks to know that they're not alone, isn't it? That there are other Republicans out there, and they can be proud to be a member of the GOP in the nation's capital, isn't it?
No, that's right. And look, if you look at the state of the city, look, everybody is fired up about the crime crisis in Washington, D.C., but obviously Republicans are extremely fired up. We're always concerned about parental choice in education and making sure that continues in D.C. And then if you look at the road ahead, we really are in a situation where, since this council and the mayor only spend, we're in a situation where we're looking at tax increases on individual taxpayers, and for high-income earners, and by the D.C. government standards, high-income earners make like over $25,000 a year.
Wow.
So, that number was a joke, but it's really not that high.
Right.
Consider high-income earners. And so, look, we have a lot of issues either right now in our face with the homicides and the carjackings, but then looking down the road, we have a lot of they're not even talking about what's going on in our schools,
right? Because
everyone is focused on who got carjacked or murdered or robbed. They're not talking about the fact that they're running out of all their COVID money, and they have just been spending that on programs. For example, they spent last year $115 million on violence interrupters. Right? They decreased the police force to 40-year lows, but they spent $150 million on violence interrupters. Can anyone tell me what that money was used for? The city government has so much money, and it's dwindling down.
It is really a competition between D.C. and Maryland to see who can do dumber things faster.
Exactly.
I think our elected officials are winning.
Well, there you go.
You'd be surprised, Pat.
Yes.
You'd be surprised.
So, Pat, listen, before we let you go, I just want to say, if you guys need to get on this, D.C. needs to be made a federal income tax-free zone. I think you would see a renaissance in free market limited government activism in D.C. Folks moving to D.C. If it was tax-free. Pat Mara, how do folks tell us again, how do folks vote in this primary?
Sure. By the way, I couldn't agree with you more on the income-free tax zone, or tax-free income zone. But they need to go to the Madison Hotel, which is 1177 15th Street Northwest. The polling hours were open from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. I'm literally looking at probably close to 80 voting machines right now. So,
wow.
If we have 80 people in here at once, we can accommodate you. But you're only voting once for president, so this isn't a long process. You're just going to come in. There's some candidate tables. We're gonna confirm you're a registered Republican, and then you're gonna go vote, and then you can exit. So that's all you're voting for, and it should be a fairly quick process. 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. over the next 3 days at the Madison Marriott Hotel downtown.
There we go. Thank you,
Excellent.
Pat Mara, chairman of the D.C. Republican Party. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
We will continue in just a moment.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Miss anything? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Get today's breaking news on the Vince Colonnade Show, weekdays 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
Nice weather, beautiful day, but a very dangerous border. We're going to take care of it. Thank you.
Yeah, so Trump was down at the border yesterday, Patrice. Biden was down at the border yesterday.
Did they shake hands, Andrew?
No, this was not like when President Trump met Javier Milei last week, and there were no hugs exchanged.
Oh, no hugs. Okay.
Down there, and certainly not after the last week with the two of them going at it in interviews. This is going to get more combative before it gets less between the two of them. But very different visits here. I mean, listen, we knew it was going to happen. That essentially Joe Biden not admitting any of his own culpability in all of this, right? To think about it. It's funny because yesterday I was on the air and was playing the clip, right? They keep wanting to blame this present border crisis on Donald Trump. But there is this really great interview that Mayorkas gave in the fall of 2021, in which he did we play this yesterday? Yes. He says, "Oh yeah, we've rescinded so many." I mean, very much it was a very Trump-like statement, I should say. We've had the best rescinding of the Trump policies that anybody could ever do. We have we rescinded so many Trump policies. We can't count how many Trump policies we rescinded. And yet they're going to turn around and they're going to blame Donald Trump for this mess here. But I love this here real quick. Let me before I get your reaction to this. Here is Cringe Jean-Pierre with John Berman talking about the issues. Saying it's not about politics. Let's play cut 10.
What does it tell you that both President Biden and Donald Trump are going to be at the border on the same day?
There's a difference here, and I want to be very clear about this because the president is going to, as you just said, Brownsville, Texas, to hear directly from the Border Patrol agents, to hear directly from the frontline personnel on what is going on the ground. And let's not forget, the president was at the border just about a year ago in January of 2023 to do the same. This is not about politics for the president.
It worked then. Patrice. You know, to quote George W. Bush, doing a heck of a job there, Brownie. You know, I mean,
it's
like,
only getting worse. If him going to the border is going to spike the number of immigrants by 1 million, illegal immigrants by 1 million at the border, he needs to stay away and maybe send back the border czar, his vice president. I mean, you can't. Yesterday was horrendous, and the side by side between these two puts it very clearly in the Americans' eyes how different these two are in their policies and, frankly, their performance, their ability to interact with people, to actually not stand looking like you're lost in the twilight zone for minutes. It was so embarrassing on the Biden side.
Now, Patrice, this is why show prep is so important and why I love doing the show with you and having these meetings with you. If folks go and visit the Washington Post website this morning, what are they going to see? Are they going to see the discussions of the border?
They will not. The border article was way down on the Washington Post homepage. I think it was after how to make brownies with hemp. I mean, it's ridiculous. You've got massive leaks of documents as the top story. Gaza, Russia, those are the top stories. You've got the opinion pieces going on. Even after it was after the Kate Middleton story, health update story. That's when they mentioned, oh yeah, the current president and the former president were at their southern border on the same day, not in the same place. That's where they dropped that story because they want to bury it. They know that side by side image and video. You got to watch the video, folks. But the side by side between the two presidents is damaging for Biden and only helps Trump's case, who really made the southern border an issue running in 2016.
Well, so we're going to talk with Jenny Tare and Brett Baer about these visits later on in the show.
Good.
And when we continue the conversation in just a moment, we're gonna talk about the fact Mayorkas doesn't think he has any power to deal with the border. Right now, it is 7:22 a.m. You would think that this administration didn't think it had any power. I mean, despite the fact the Constitution makes it really clear that defending our borders is well within the orbit of the presidency to do. Secretary Mayorkas was asked about this. Let's play cut 14.
Are there no executive actions that the president can take to reduce the large number of migrants that are coming to the U.S.-Mexico border that we saw in 2023 and continue this year.
The fact of the matter is that the only enduring solution is legislation. Congress needs to act. We have a bipartisan piece of legislation that 3 senators worked on intensely for a number of months. I was very privileged to be at the table to provide technical and operational expertise. The administration was represented at the table. We need Congress to act.
Yeah, listen, how about not giving debit cards to immigrants, promising them
Thank
cash?
you.
Promising them cash when we get there. Listen, we've got all kinds of stuff coming up on the show. We're going to continue this conversation about the border with Brett Baer and Jenny Tare in the next hour. When we return after the news, when Patrice and I return, because nobody else is going anywhere, we're going to be talking with former FCC Commissioner Michael Reilly about DEI and gender and what's going on at the FCC. This is O'Connor and Company, WMAL.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to O'Connor and Company. I am Andrew Langer sitting for Larry today alongside Patrice Onwuka. Hey there, Patrice.
Good, happy Friday, Andrew.
Now, when you're in on Thursdays, do you also call it Thursday, or that is
No,
safe for Friday?
absolutely not. The energy is safe for Friday.
Yes, I always love it when a Thursday feels like a Friday, but of course this week we didn't get that. We got great stuff coming up today. By the way, it's 7:37 on News Talk 105.9. We are making sense of the news. Next hour, we got Mike Litterst from the National Park Service to talk about the cherry blossoms, and we've got Jenny Tare and Brett Baer to talk about these border visits as well. Joining us right now, though, I'm very excited to have him on. Former FCC Commissioner Michael Reilly. And, Michael, I was fortunate last week. I did a panel at CPAC. Your colleague Brendan Carr was on it, and he tipped us off to this new FCC-mandated scorecards for media companies on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Talk to us about this.
Well, Andrew and Patrice, thanks for having me. This is a pretty significant ask from the FCC. What they're demanding of broadcasters, radio and television stations, is that they file their information, they collect information from all their employees, race, gender, equity, all the different information about their employees, and then they make it publicly available. In the past, the commission wanted to go after companies they thought the numbers didn't look exactly how they wanted to be, and the court said, oh, no, that's a problem. That's a constitutional problem. And threw them out. So this time the commission's saying, well, we're not going to do that. We're just going to make it publicly available, and then we're going to let our, the super liberal crazy groups go out there and attack companies who we think the numbers aren't good enough. So they're basically diversifying the enforcement and letting the private industry or the private equity groups go after companies. And I suspect that's going to run into problems in the court. But if it doesn't, it's a problem for an industry that's already facing a lot of competitive advantages to a lot of different voices that are already out there. And at the same time, they're bringing benefits to consumers. And broadcasters should hire the best person for the job, not worry about what numbers they're filing.
And what a great argument you're making, Commissioner, on the first day of Women's History Month. But very often, women are just boiled down to gender quotas, and now you layer on that race quotas from Black History Month, for example. And we're not necessarily going after ensuring that we have the right people in the right positions or qualified people. We're just going after these demographic headcounts for no good reason, other than to open the door, as you rightly said, to outside groups to shake down corporations, to impose DEI mandates and so on and so forth. But meanwhile, I think you've done a great job when you were on the FCC of working to close the digital divide when it comes to rural broadband. Can you talk to us, though, about, how, rural America is struggling still with broadband issues? And that's not a race gender issue. That's an economic rural urban issue.
No, you said it so well. There are a number of families in America that don't have broadband, don't have access, even if they have the money. They can't find someone. There's no one in their area to bring service. And so I spent a great deal of time, and still do, trying to figure out how do we get broadband in those areas. And there's a couple problems that our own government is causing. One is, at the Department of Commerce, they're trying to keep Virginia from having money that's already allocated for them. $1.5 billion are going to help connect the rest of the state. 162,000 Virginians, Old Dominion residents, are going to get broadband under this program. And the Department of Commerce is saying, oh, no. Unless they set a specific rate for this one particular offering, then that's not going to qualify, and we're not going to give them the money. That's a big problem in my mind, because we're holding off to try and get a terrible policy, and we're keeping people from getting broadband at the same time.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Tim Lee from the Center for Individual Freedom about this and what's being driven by NTIA. Let me ask you this question. I know it's an obscure issue. Those of us who work on tech policy have heard quite a bit about this, the issue of pole attachments. What's going on with utility poles and that getting in the way of this deployment of broadband?
Well, it's an absolutely a problem as you try to make deployment decisions and companies try to roll out service to the unserved. You run into areas where you're not going to, part of Virginia, you're not going to roll into the, Shenandoah Valley and dig into the ground. So you're going to go aerial, and you need to use some of the poles that are already in existence rather than dropping new poles. And some electric utility companies are like, nah, we don't exactly want you to do that, or we want to charge you an exorbitant rate for doing so. And that's a big problem. The question is, do you want broadband to go out there, or are you trying to make these electric companies, financially better positioned? The poles are already paid for. The ratepayers have paid for them decades ago. And now the electric utility is saying, you know what, we want to make sure that the broadband company pays at the highest level, and then the process not work in their advantage, because the funny flip of this is the electric utilities are trying to get into the broadband business. So they're using their own poles as a mechanism to keep competition from entering, or someone else from being able to provide service in their areas.
Well, I appreciate that. Michael Reilly, how do folks find out about the good work you're doing? How do they get involved? How do they make their voices heard on this?
I'm available on all social media, and you can see me. I'll be talking about all these issues and more in the coming days.
I appreciate that. Michael Reilly, former FCC commissioner, thank you so very much for joining us today.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks. We've got more coming up at 7:43 on WMAL. By the way, Patrice, I did go and look up because I was on my mind. Daylight savings time starts next weekend, not this weekend.
What?
Next
no.
Weekend. Next weekend, just so you know.
Oh, no.
So here's the thing. You
Okay.
want to, I hate stories. I hate stories of judges decided to kick people when they're down. And this is one of those stories here. You have Catherine Herridge, who's been doing yeoman's work and trying to peel back a lot of national security stories, not the least of which is this story about Chinese infiltration of our institutions of higher education, which is a real issue, a legitimate issue.
Yes.
And she just got fired by Paramount, by CBS, and and had her files seized, by the way, which is also unprecedented.
Yes.
This story out, you're the one who pulled this one out. I appreciate this. Being fined, this judge is finding her in contempt of court for refusing to divulge her sources, finding her $800 a day. Again, just laid off by CBS, being fined $800 a day. Your thoughts on this?
Well, and she's up against she's facing a huge lawsuit here. I mean, she's suing to protect on the grounds of first free speech rights and also for, protection of, journalism. She does investigative journalism. She was investigating some, different whatever cases she had some sources that she refused to divulge. This was when she was still at Fox News, by the way. And now you have a Chinese American scientist who is filed a lawsuit against the FBI, and I guess it's trying to get access to Catherine Herridge's sources to try to prove this scientist's case. And so that's what the kind of the backstory for this lawsuit, that she's defying the judge's orders to turn over her sources. Every year, journalist says, no, I don't need to turn over my sources. Interestingly, what I find so interesting, Fox News, she left Fox News back in 2019, but
Right.
Fox put out a statement in support of her. This is what the statement read here. In essence, we stand behind her in this case. I can't find obviously it disappears right when I'm looking for it.
Of course.
The Fox News media remains committed to protecting the rights of a free press and freedom of speech and believes this decision should be appealed. This would have a deeply chilling effect on journalism. Yet,
Right.
CBS, her most recent boss, where she left Fox to go to, they gave her the boot. And they
Yes.
have not put out a statement in support of her. In fact, as you rightly said, they seized her file. So, I mean, I feel it for Catherine, and I feel it for so many journalists who are putting their neck and their lives on the line. And you just got to think twice about who really is the right type of employer for you.
Right. Well, and Cooper, the judge in this case, acknowledged that the decision would have implications for the press. He wrote, the court does not reach this result lightly. It recognizes that the paramount importance of a free press in society, maybe, and the critical role that confidential sources play in the work of investigative journalists like Herridge. Yet the court also has its own role to play in upholding law and safeguarding judicial authority. Right, judicial authority is apparently paramount in this case. You go against the judge, and you're going to find yourself caught between a rock and a hard place here. I mean, this is also what we're getting to is this issue of when the left, and I'm gonna put this in here, right? I don't know who Chen is and you know this situation or what his politics are, but I do know that when the state, let's put it this way, when the deep state wants its scalps, it's going to go and get those scalps, and they're going to pull out any situation at all here. Here's what we know. And again, I don't know this Chen person. I don't know what the specific allegations are. Here's what I do know. I do know that the CCP, the Communist Party of China, has been working diligently to infiltrate our institutes of higher education,
Absolutely.
as well as elsewhere in society. And we need to have journalists like Catherine Herridge pushing back on this. By the way, also talking about this issue of the deep state here, the case has also renewed calls for Congress to pass legislation offering federal protections to journalists. In June, a bipartisan group of lawmakers reintroduced the Protect Reporters from Exploitive State Spying Act. Also, I hate these clever acronyms. Also known as the Press Act. Which is important here, isn't it? Isn't it, Patrice?
It is important. And you know what? You would think that the Constitution of the United States should provide enough protection for journalists. Right. Apparently it's not. And so if Congress wants to step in and provide some added, really clearly defined in law for any judges out there that think that their judicial powers usurps the Constitution, no. That's not how this works. Without a free press, we are no different than China. We are no different than all of these tyrannies across the rest of the world. And increasingly, it's looking more and more like we are looking like a tyranny rather than the free beacon of light and hope across the world that we should be.
Well, this gets into what we were talking about earlier with Zach Smith from Herridge, right? We are starting to see a return to the constitutional true north, or at least people calling for a return to constitutional true north. That's vitally important. It's 7:53 right here on O'Connor and Company, WMAL.